Okay, we're live. Hey, everybody. Welcome to Harmony TV. Today is part 3 of my 3-part series on sleep. I I gave a lot of I asked a lot of women, by the way, how they were doing in the sleep department, what was going on with them, and I got a pretty solid mix between women who were having trouble getting to sleep, women who were having trouble staying asleep between the hours of like 1 and 4. And then the last one was women waking up feeling very tired, feeling as though they hadn't rested, even though potentially they're sleeping through the night, not waking up, and potentially getting to bed and getting a solid 7 or 8 hours of sleep. So today is going to be all about cortisol, how we dance with our stress, and what it looks like when we age. So, and why sleep is so important. So, in week 1, in getting to sleep, I talked a lot about melatonin. I talked a lot about what some of the key sort of sleep hygiene aspects were. So, if you haven't watched part 1 and part 2 of the series, please go back and watch. You can watch them on my personal page on Facebook. If you're in my Facebook group, you can watch it there. You can watch it on my website, or now Kristen's put us up on the YouTube. So now it's official. I have a YouTube channel, which, by the way, just bumps me up like half a rung with my teenage boys. They're already talking about merchandise and sponsors. Hilarious, seeing as I only have 8 people who have ever seen a video on my YouTube channel. But thank you to those 8 women or men, whoever saw and who has already subscribed. So if you're into YouTube, if that's where you listen to things, please go subscribe. You'll always know when something comes up. Pass this along to maybe some of the people that you know or some of the people out there that this could help. I'm always thankful for anybody who decides to pass this along. So for any of you who this is your first time watching, my name is Michelle Aspinwall. I'm a health advisor to women over 40 who are looking to age differently, sleep differently, and work with how their body and their systems work together with anything from chronic disease to autoimmune to really just navigating these years of perimenopause, menopause, and postmenopause in the most vital and longevity as possible. So today, so day 1 was I'm like, oh. Day 1 was all about getting to sleep. So I told you guys about that one. Session 2, Harmony TV 2 on sleep, was all about staying asleep. So in that episode, I talked about the body clock, which is a part of Chinese medicine. We look at the organs, we look at what the organs are doing at what time. And sometimes if you look at the organs in the middle of the night and you start to recognize how you're feeling, what are the stressors, are you having an emotional situation with someone you love or someone you work with? These are some of the contributing factors, as well as what are you doing during the daylight hours. So if this interests you, if this is one of the things that you struggle with, please go back and watch part 1, part 2, and of course you're here today, part 3. Part 3 is all about stress. So it's interesting. So I say that I work with women between 40 and 55, but the reality is I work with women of any age. I currently have 2 clients who are in their 20s. I have a client who is over 60. And then, of course, I've just been, nursing my mom back to a pretty high standard of health, and she's 75. So just so that we all know, I want to just bust any hormone myths out there. Even though a woman is premenopausal, which means she's completely fertile, completely within childbearing years, even though she may not be wanting a child, your body, your hormones are working. You have all your hormones working for you in the most optimal way if you are living a very harmonious life. I like to use the word harmony because I think of hormones and our systems as working in tandem, in harmony, versus working in balance, because our hormones aren't actually balanced. They work in ebbs and flows, which is a more harmonious state, and harmony speaks to all the different ways in which our body works together. So for women who are premenopausal, which is like, about the age of like 16 or 18 up to age 35. So that's premenopause. Perimenopause starts usually somewhere between like 36 and 42, and it can last between 8 and 10 years. And that leads up to the day you go through menopause, which is the day that you haven't had a cycle for 12 consecutive months. That's your menopausal party day. That's how I define it in my practice. And then everything after that, after those 12 consecutive months, is postmenopause. And in those years, the ovaries have quieted down. So they are no longer producing an egg, obviously. There's no longer a follicle that's producing an egg, which then, creates ovulation, which then allows us the opportunity to grow and sustain life within our bodies. And then, of course, from that egg, if you don't become pregnant, your estrogen lowers and your progesterone rises. This is the natural cycle of how a woman's body works. And then, of course, if you're not pregnant, then you have a cycle where you're sloughing off what the uterine lining of your body's produced in order for the baby to grow, the fertilized egg to grow. So, and then in the perimenopausal state, we're in some flux. Some months we are ovulating, some months we aren't ovulating. This creates shifts in estrogen and progesterone. And I talked about that in a previous episode regarding estrogen, and I'm sure we'll be talking about that a lot now. But today I want to talk about what happens to women in this very specific category of like 36 to 55, because this is the category where women feel the lack of sleep or challenged sleep or sleep that isn't restful the most, because we have multiple stressors going on in our life, and because not only do we have multiple stressors, but our body is going through a massive shift. So the three shifts the woman goes through over the course of her life. She goes through many, of course, right? But one of them is going from a child to a pubescent woman. So it's when a young girl moves from being a child to having a cycle. So that's the first one. The second one is if and indeed a woman does go through childbirth, so pregnancy and delivery and postpartum, right after the baby comes out, that fourth trimester, that's a major stressor on the body. Good stress, of course. It's like getting the Cracker Jack prize at the end of the box, but it is nonetheless a major stressor. And then the third major stressor for women is, of course, perimenopause leading into menopause. This is like the opposite of puberty, right? We're moving out of those fertile years and our body is going through major changes. And I think one of the things that I find really complicated and saddening, to be quite honest, is how this stage of life in a woman's life, because we're so involved in youth, in looking young, in appearing to be physically fit and younger than our biological age. And of course, what the aging process looks like allowing ourselves the process of aging gracefully. We just don't necessarily value, the majority of the population doesn't necessarily value this. And so this stage of life can really be tumultuous and very taxing on women, as well as all of the physical stressors in our life, right? Like, for example, I'm one of those women who I had children later in life. So I'm literally going through the late perimenopause years at the same time as my boys are entering their most beautiful, fruitful, kind of like puberty hitting and the hormones are raging time. And I think I'm a mother of boys, but for a mother who has daughters, this can be a really kind of like minefield for a lot of women as they are mourning the loss of what their body was capable of doing and watching their daughters come into this beautiful, fertile, really dynamic time. And for some young girls, let's be honest, like it can be kind of a tumultuous time for them as well. So like big emotions, ups and downs, things like that. So not to mention aging parents, not to mention, a relationship or a partner that is kind of going like this instead of being like parallel, right? Or even like intertwining and kind of navigating that sea of midlife and aging together with your partner, right? So any or all of these, or some combination of these, or something else that, we could have. I was on retreat last week with a bunch of women, and one of the women who has 4 children said something really that hit me in my heart. Like when she said it, I was just, it just really it had to land, and I had to find a place to put it. She said to the women at the table, she said, us mothers are usually only as happy as our saddest child. And I was like, wow, like that really hit home. And it really affected me. And I started thinking about like, I'm, how blessed I am, and how both of my boys are pretty good. They're pretty, I think they're pretty healthy, pretty happy kids. And at the same time, I could see where that would be completely true as I was sort of scanning my friends and scanning the things that mothers go through with their kids. So all this is to say, right, that these years, 36 to 55, kids are going through puberty, kids are getting older, they're finding their own, they're becoming independent, kids are going off to college, marriages and relationships are changing, parents are aging, some parents are moving on, passing into the next realm. There's a lot of things, right? Moving is a major stressor. I can speak to that 100% from experience this year. It was a beautiful thing, but hugely stressful nonetheless. And we're just about to finish it. It's taken us 14 months to move our family halfway across the country. Here we are. Never a dull moment in the Aspinwall household. So what does this have to do with sleep? As women enter this age, cortisol is a distinct hormone that a lot of us think of cortisol as our stress hormone, and it most definitely is one of our stress hormones, particularly made in the adrenal glands. The adrenal glands speak to, there's a feedback loop, and I talk about this loop all the time, the hypothalamus, pituitary, adrenal, ovary loop, right? The HPO, HPA axis. This is another thing that you hear it. Your doctor may have spoken to you about it using those abbreviated terms. And the interesting thing is how we navigate stress it creates the relationship to how we age. Because, and I'll tell you this, cortisol is the most essential hormone that we make. We need it the most. And what I mean by that is, if we are in a chronic stress condition, the body makes cortisol over and on top of making it, prioritizes cortisol because our cells need cortisol for energy. So it prioritizes that over other very vital hormones, especially for mood, for creating bone and tissue regeneration. So progesterone, testosterone, and thyroid. So over these hormones, the body will prioritize cortisol. So what does that mean? That means if you are in this kind of like heightened cortisol state and you don't have the tools and you're not dancing and navigating that stress, where do you think it's going to affect you first? First, you're going to see it affect you in your mood and how your body regulates itself. And then the next place you're going to see it, so like level 2, is going to be how you sleep. Meaning, do you have trouble getting asleep? Do you have trouble staying asleep? Or do you go to sleep? Maybe you sleep, perfectly fine through the night, but you wake up and you're not rested. This is a direct relationship usually to thyroid. And there's a direct relationship, as I just stated, to thyroid, low thyroid, TSH, thyroid stimulating hormones, and others, but particularly that one, and cortisol. So what can you do about this, right? Kristen, is that the question you want to ask me? Like, okay, Michelle, nerding out, what can we do about this? The first thing you need to do is recognize that this is like the Goldilocks, that this is like understanding how you navigate your stress and prioritizing finding yourself going in and out, right? So not staying at heightened, stressful situations, but actually bringing yourself down out of a very stressed state into a more relaxed state. By the time you get to the stage where you are waking up unrested and you've had a pretty decent night's sleep, this is the time, and I don't want to scare anyone, but at the same time, I have to speak real. I have to put it out there because my intention and goal always with Harmony TV and everything I do and every, live I do on any platform is to really help women understand how their body functions and when you need to really wake up step up and take responsibility for how your life is unfolding in front of you. Waking up not feeling rested in a pretty regular pattern is very much an indication that you need to step up and get some help. Work with a doctor, work with a naturopath, work with me, work with someone else, some other kind of person, because this is the stage at which you've already moved past the place of high cortisol and you're moving into your cells aren't able to get that energy, which is affecting other systems in your body. It's, it's shortening, potentially has the potential to shorten your lifespan, your telomeres, which are, anyway, I don't want to get into telomeres. This isn't a science lesson, right, Kristen? Michelle, not a science lesson. But to not to nerd out on this, but really you're actually you're shortening your length of life, and you're most definitely, you're affecting your vitality, you're affecting your daily, how you interact and again, sort of interface within your daily life. And I think that's really important. Not only that, but cortisol ages us. Excess cortisol, too much cortisol in our body creates chronic inflammation, and an inflammatory response creates chronic conditions. What are some of those chronic conditions? Thyroid, autoimmune disease, prediabetes, which leads to diabetes. And diabetes is the precursor to a lot of things in our 60s, 70s, and 80s, ladies, that we do not want. Cancer, right? Any of the inflammatory brain diseases. I talk about these all the time. I'm sure people are getting bored of me talking about things that seem like they're 30 or 40 years away, but I'm telling you right now, what you do in your 40s and 50s in relationship to cortisol, in relationship to finding that harmony as you navigate perimenopause into menopause, this is where you're making crucial steps to how your body and how your brain functions in your 70s and 80s. And our central nervous system in our brain obviously impacts our daily life functions, how our body navigates, stress and sleep and metabolism and appetite and all of the things, right? And so in perimenopause in particular, in these 36 to 55 years, right, like adrenal support is really, really important. So supporting the adrenals, which is a yin. So I talk about the yin and the yang, right? So supporting the yin. So we're very much a doing society. At this age, we're all about the doing. We're cooking, we're shuttling, we're going to games, we're raising the kids, we're taking care of our parents, we're navigating, big up levels in our career. Maybe we're navigating starting a new career. That's another thing that women do at this stage of life when kids are getting older is they go and they open that yoga studio, or they go back to school and they get another degree, right, Kristen? Kristen can speak to this because she's doing major things in her personal life. But this is one of the areas where I find that if women learn to really support the adrenal glands, there are herbs, there are supplements to do that. There are certain foods that really support the adrenals. Sleep is crucial. So how do you get better sleep? Kristen, did I miss anything? Is there anything you want to ask me before I get into the how?
I did want to ask you, because I've saved this question for 3 weeks, or not 3 weeks, for 3 episodes. I guess it has been 3 weeks. And of course, the dog's gonna start barking.
We love Kristen.
I wanted to ask you about the situation that many people find themselves in, where they are tired all day long, and then they go to lie down to sleep, and then they're suddenly like wide awake and wired. And I think a lot of women deal with that, because it seems like you're exhausted all day and you lay down, and that's when you think about your to-do list or anything you have anxiety about, and then you can't go to sleep and you're all jacked up again.
Yes. And that might be part of sort of constant waking, or not getting into those sort of deeper, the really deep sleep that we crave. Because again, and I think I talked about this in the second week, it's been, we recorded that one, so it's been 2 weeks. So it's like not in the forefront of my brain, but we talked about light sleep, REM sleep, and deep sleep. And one of the ways I track my sleep is through this black ring that I wear all the time, my Oura ring. And I notice on nights that I don't get great sleep, I go back and I look, is it movement oriented? So is it temperature oriented? So these are some of the things that I think prevent a woman from getting a good night's sleep, even if she's not awake at 1 o'clock for an hour, right? Is like is the temperature in your room conducive to sleeping for you? Because of course, as our estrogen and progesterone change, this and our thyroid starts to go down because we're super stressed, right? You're not producing the thyroid hormones. They help regulate temperature, right? So understanding how to support your thyroid. There are certain, selenium is one of the main nutrients, that and also iodine, two nutrients that are super, super important for supporting the thyroid, but you want to do it properly and not to excess, because both of those are things that can cause havoc in the body if the levels are too high. So we always, always, always want to test when it comes to thyroid. Test, don't guess, right? That's what all the doctors say. Test, don't guess. And I'm going to talk about how to do that at the very end of this episode. So stay tuned if you are wanting to hear more about how to do that. But to get more to your question, Kristen, is that, what you're doing during your daytime hours, that kind of like go, 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 like kind of military, like, SWAT team, like go, 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 like all these movies I'm watching with my kids. I'm like, oh, this is like so stressful just to watch this movie. But like the go, go, go nature, and not allowing yourself, an hour in your day to just really pull back and rest. And when I say rest, it can mean anything from like a 20-minute, like close your eyes, to just like shutting off the computer, taking your lunch break and going for a walk. Like using half of your lunch break to like get outside and go for a walk. Being outside and away from the blue light of the computer, which is incredibly alert. It's like it wakes us up. So it's kind of like hyper wakes us during the day, which can it can detract from good nighttime sleep, especially if you're on computers all day long for like 8, 10, 12 hours. That's something or a tablet or a phone, something to really think about. Another thing is, what are you eating? So cortisol, let's go back to cortisol. This is part of your answer. Cortisol, we have a natural cortisol range. So in the morning, we want our cortisol to rise, especially the 30 minutes after we wake up. Our cortisol is like, this is what gets us from a fully flat asleep position to like, okay, I'm rested, I'm awake, I want to stand up, I want to get going, I'm excited for my day. Cortisol is that hormone. And I'm going to speak a little bit more. Well, why don't I just do it now? So cortisol has this beautiful thing in the morning. It's called the cortisol awakening response. And what it does is it gathers up, it goes through the body and it gathers up all of the like pre-cancer, deteriorating, like has a genetic, like weird component to it, pre-autoimmune, all these cells, it gathers them up and it like bursts them out into the lymphatic system so your body can get rid of them. This is one of the great advantages of cortisol. This is why we have cortisol. This is why we love cortisol. This is why we want to make sure that our cells are able to get the cortisol into them so that the cortisol can do its job, right? But for some women, their cortisol response is very low in the morning, which means their body isn't effectively and efficiently using it to its greatest advantage. This is something we test for, and we want to make sure that the cortisol awakening response is in a good range, because if it's not, that can over time create a situation that's not ideal in any male and female, but especially the female body, because we're doing all the time, right? So we want to make sure that we have a good cortisol awakening response. Then as the day goes on, we peak, and then it's a slow decline. So as we start to decline, that decline is like between 3 and 5, we start to really feel the decline. If you notice, this is when the sun really shifts positions in the sky. And there's a direct relationship, ladies. This is super important. And if you take nothing away from this talk, I want you to hear this, which is that, so melatonin in the brain, I talked about that in episode 1, in part 1, not episode 1, but part 1 of sleep. So melatonin made in the brain, right? Most of it. And serotonin, mostly made in the gut, also made in the brain, but a lot of it's made in the gut. What do you think activates serotonin? Kristen, do you remember what activates serotonin? Kristen's eyes just bugged out.
I was like not prepared.
I totally didn't mean to put you on the spot, but I love that that even though you're sitting here listening, you don't remember. So here's what activates serotonin: light. especially
I
the
did know that, actually.
red sunlight in the morning and the warmer sunlight as the sun is starting to go down. Those two polar times of the day where light is very distinct and specific. If you think about it, think about long shadows. So I think about it as, and I try to walk when my shadow is long. That would be another help. And particularly this time of year, October, this is why I did this now. This time of year when the sun is at a different angle than the summer and a different angle than the winter, this is a beautiful time, ladies, to get out in the sun. And I talked about this on retreat last week, and all the ladies were making fun of me because I would be laying on the beach early in the like early-ish, sitting on the beach or going for a walk, and they're like, what are you doing? And I would say to them, I'm going outside to allow the sun to hit my skin and transform cortisol, to transform cholesterol into vitamin D. And I got that look. What? And I'm like, I'm going out to get the sun, to allow the sun to hit me so that I'm creating vitamin D and storing it up, because we want to store vitamin D for the winter and for the summer. We get more vitamin D obviously during the summer, but during the summer we've got that really harsh, intense sun, and we block that sun with sunscreen, sun protective clothing, shade, and sunglasses. So sunglasses will prevent that light, that particular light that goes in through the eye and activates serotonin in the gut. Am I getting too like nerdy, Kristen? Is this
No,
good?
that's good.
Okay. So one of the things you can do to answer Kristen's question to help you is to go for a walk okay, we're about to have a time change. For those of you living in the Northern Hemisphere, we're about to switch the clocks. I don't remember when it exactly is, but it's got to be coming up because we've got nice 7:30 sunsets, and I love it. And we have the most beautiful light here in Texas, like stunning, like gorgeous, orange skies, and I just love it. So I try to go out and I've done a few Insta stories where I've gone out like at 5 or 5:30, got that beautiful warm light. And you don't need very much, ladies. You need like 10 minutes of it. This isn't like go get on the treadmill for 45 minutes to bust anything. This is like 10 minutes, right? 5 to 10 minutes. And then in the morning, you want to go out and get out there in the sunlight and get your body moving, get your juices flowing, get the lymphatic system moving, as well as getting that sunlight to hit your skin, to transform cholesterol in your skin to vitamin D. So it's all these different things. So if you're having trouble waking up in the morning feeling rested, the free thing to do, first and foremost, obviously taking vitamin D is one option. But if you're not doing anything, you're just taking vitamin D, it's very different, the chemical response of taking a supplement versus being out in the sun. It's like the difference between eating a mango and getting that kind of vitamin C versus taking ascorbic acid. It's not the same vitamin C, and what the body does with a mango is very different than what the body does with a vitamin C supplement. So I just want to encourage you to do both, right? We want to take the supplements, we want to take high quality supplements, but we also want to get out, and we want that relationship to start playing in our body, especially during these years of 36 to 55. It's crucial. So, and also, ladies, serotonin. Serotonin manages sleep, appetite, and mood. Sleep, appetite, and mood. So if you're having trouble with rage and anxiety, that sunlight's going to help you. If you're having trouble, maybe you're getting a really, really intense cravings. There's a lot of things, and a lot of times there are multiple hormonal disharmonies, imbalances, and so sometimes you need to work on multiple things at once. But this is something that's free and available to everyone, which is to get yourself out into the light and as much skin as you possibly can, depending on wherever you live, depending on the temperature. Get yourself outside into the sun. Even if the sun is like behind a cloud, because I get that question a lot, still get yourself out into the sun. So another thing you can do to support the adrenal glands, which is going back to the glands that actually produce cortisol, because what we want to do is support the adrenal glands, which are part of the sacral chakra. The sacral chakra is what houses the ovaries, the womb, our womb energy, which is vital and essential to women over 50 this energy we have to learn to harness. We have to support it. We have to love it. We have to lean into it. We have to harness it and use it and move it through the body. And one of the ways to do that is to eat the orange to orange yellow foods. It supports both the sacral and the solar plexus. So eating those foods, eating those flowers, eat your nasturtium, right? You can, even the red foods will do this. That's really supporting the root chakra, but the root chakra also houses, the root chakra is really about structure, stability, safety, rooting yourself to the earth, feeling grounded in your body, in your life. So if any of this speaks to you, again, I use all of the different modalities, everything from the east to the south to, witchery. I like to call my herbal practice a little bit of witchery, a little bit of like lotions and potions, as my boys call it. And rest, allowing yourself to rest when that cortisol starts to lower in around the 4 o'clock hour. Can you actually lay down for 10 minutes? Can you have a little power nap? Can you, instead of using caffeine, can you support yourself with protein? That's another thing. Are you getting enough protein? And then the last thing would be to help yourself with stress is if you're one of those women who's like after work, maybe your job is super stressful and you're going and you're exercising for an hour after work, that is raising your cortisol almost to your detriment. You do better to exercise earlier in the day versus later in the day. Later in the day, you want to support the body in winding down, not revving it up. So a power walk would do you better than, for example, a spin class or what's the dance? It sounds like Dumbo.
Are you talking about Zumba?
Zumba. Yeah.
I mean, the rumba is a dance, but I don't think that's what you mean.
Yeah, no, it's those like super intense classes where you're really getting your heartbeat up, right? Like I can't. My husband makes fun of me. Like I'll say the funny, and he's like, no, you mean da 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 da. I'm like, yeah, that's what I mean. So, okay, so we talked about light, we talked about foods, we talked about resting, we talked about So in terms of dancing with your stress, the more you lessen, the more you harmonize the stimulants, like cut back on the stimulants and cut and prioritize nutrients like eating protein, nutrients like supplements, like again, selenium, what are some of the other ones? Getting some vitamin D, getting some vitamin C. So getting that protein and also getting some of your essential nutrients is super important. So this is the thing I would recommend over like the caffeine, the sugar, the chocolate. Although a little bit of dark chocolate is great, but a whole candy bar 4 or 5 times a week, you're going to pack on the pounds. And there is caffeine in chocolate. So depending on how your genetics are, if you have that genetic mutation that takes you longer to metabolize caffeine as you get older, you're going to feel the effects of that. And that's going to maybe wake you up, but maybe not, but it's going to rev you up 6 to 9 hours because your body's still processing that caffeine. So sometimes even though we think caffeine's our friend, it's actually hurting us over the long haul. Because I'm going to tell you right now, if you track your sleep through an Oura Ring or something else, you're going to see that you're having spikes in your heart rate, spikes in your body temperature, or it's creating like a restless sleep, which means you're moving around, which is interrupting the deep sleep. And when you interrupt the deep sleep, your brain actually isn't able to detox and dump what it needs to dump through the body so the liver can take care of that, and the lungs and the intestines. So that is, I think, let me check out my notes here. I've got little notes around my ring light. I think that's all I have to say about sleep. Kristen, what have I missed? What are your questions? Speak to me, tell me. There's a squirrel on my step.
I guess my question would be, you mentioned how you can sometimes have several hormone disharmonies.
Yeah.
And how do you go about like kind of figuring out what you've got going on and what the right plan of action is?
Yes.
Because it's different comparing, depending on what you've got going on.
Kristen always brings me back to center. So here's a couple of things. First off, let's get away from Band-Aid solutions. And Band-Aid solutions, let me give you an example of some of the Band-Aid solutions that you think are helping your hormones, but are actually like flipping the switch on that loop. Remember I talked about the HPA, HPO axis. We want that system. We want that loop talking within our body all the time. That is a regulatory method of the body being able to be connected. Nothing in the body works alone. Nothing in the body gets sick alone, and nothing in the body gets better alone. So when we shut off the conversation in the body, what you're actually doing is disengaging the natural loops that are there to help support you, to help guide you through that intuitive voice, that little inkling of like something isn't quite right. I need to go see someone, or I need to do something, or I need to not do something. That's really important. So someone with multiple hormonal disharmonies is someone that potentially has been on birth control for a really long time. And that is creating nutrient deficiencies, especially in the B vitamins. And those B vitamins are crucial for mood. So if you're having, for example, heavy periods, really intense moods, and you're waking up not sleeping very well, that's a time to go get tested. So in that case, for example, I would recommend someone get a full thyroid panel, which is not the same as just getting your TSH, because sometimes your TSH is quote unquote in range, but there's in range and then there's optimal ranges, and they're very different. And that is something that when I work with women, I really show them. I say to them, look, your doctor says this is in range. Do you feel good? No. Okay, so if you don't feel good, do you think that maybe this isn't the best range? Possibly. So we start with working on how do we regulate the thyroid. There's a lot of things we have to do. Stress is one of them. The next is looking at food, how you combine foods. Are you eating right for your constitution? Are you strategically combining foods? Are you eating when you should be eating? And are you giving your body a rest from digestion? That is crucial in midlife, is learning to give your body a rest from digestion. Again, digestion is a stressor. It is a good stressor. We absolutely must eat in order to maintain energy, in order for our cells to maintain energy and have what we need to go through our daily life. But we actually do ourselves a disservice by eating for 14, 16, 18 hours a day, which is what a lot of Americans do in this day and age. So that's another thing. Another thing is testing. You absolutely, ladies, there is more to life than testing in blood. Hormone testing with blood is very good for certain aspects, but here's what I want to tell you. We have receptors in the body, and those receptors, particular hormones, which are messengers, right? They transport themselves through the blood. They start in the brain through that feedback loop. So the organs and glands are talking to the brain all the time, and the brain is talking to those things, those elements, those glands and organs, and sending messengers through the blood, and those messengers are connecting to their receptors. Well, here's the thing. If you disconnect the receptors, sometimes you might have too much of something circulating in your blood, and it's not going to show up because the receptors have been disconnected from the messengers. So blood testing with hormones is good for one area, but urine testing for hormones is a much better level of testing, especially in perimenopause. And the gold standard test is called the Dutch test. It's a dried urine comprehensive hormone test. And this is a particular lab out of Oregon that has created this test. It's literally the gold standard. I use it with women in this blueprint session, this 3-session program I have, and I use it in my private clients, and we use it to test women to see what's happening with neurotransmitters, to see how they're metabolizing estrogen, because that is immensely important in perimenopause and postmenopause. How are you metabolizing that estrogen? It's not enough to say it just quiets down, or you're not making enough, or because maybe you're making just a little bit, but your progesterone is tanked. Maybe your testosterone is tanked. These are things that we're not testing in blood to the level that we're testing them in urine. So this is really, really important to know what test is right for you based on your symptoms and your stage of life. So this is something that I work with women in my health practice as a health advisor, and something that I also help women understand the test so that we can use what we have. So obviously I'm not prescribing, hormone replacement, that's the doctor's, or heavy, big pharmaceuticals. That's also a doctor's job. But there's a lot we can do with food, supplements, and the plant kingdom. I mean, a ton we can do. And in fact, I would say this is what's missing in women's health right now is this level of care for women to get them to a certain level so that if and when they do decide to do bioidentical hormones, or they do decide that maybe they need a partial hysterectomy, once they do it, they'll actually feel a relief. Because sometimes we do these things and it's not taking out the organs, or it's not adding more hormones that we need. It's actually finding the harmony internally based on what we're doing in our lifestyle, how we're living our daily lives, that changes the trajectory of women's health and how they feel and how their circadian rhythm is working. Because our circadian rhythm, our night and day diurnal rhythm, is massively important to supporting all the systems of the body, including the chakras. So that's what I would say in terms of, to answer Kristen's question, like legit 10 minutes ago, how do we support a woman who has multiple hormonal things going on? And this is very, very common with women who are over 40, and certainly as women get close to 50 and get close to having their menopausal transition, is we're seeing multiple hormonal disharmonies because of what I was talking about. Like, there's multiple issues going on. And then on top of that, it's the stress of what's going on. And how is she using that? How is she dancing with that stress? And how is she allowing her body and supporting her body through this transition so that, she's not feeling the havoc of all of these elements happening at once?
And we did have one question. They wanted to know, do you recommend giving up coffee completely?
That is an incredible question. Here's what I want to say to anybody who's like, I wonder if I should. This is what I want to say. You have an inner compass. You have an inner guidance system that is unique to you. It is both biological and it is soul led. It is your soul and your biology and how they intermingle. They are intertwined in this physical 3D body that we get to inhabit for this short amount of time on Earth, right? And so if you're saying to yourself, I wonder if I should give up coffee, I would listen to that voice inside of you. Now, that's what I would say first and foremost, because here's the thing. Anyone can give up coffee for 2 or 3 weeks and see how you feel. Does it change your sleep? Does it give you more energy? Because believe it or not, sometimes the thing that we think gives us energy, what is that saying? You rob
Peter to pay Paul.
Yeah, you steal from Peter. Thank you, Kristen. You rob Peter to give to Paul, or you steal from one to give to the other. You're actually robbing your adrenals of its natural energy, which is a more consistent, constant energy versus the real. And believe you me, like, I'm not a coffee drinker, but when I drink coffee, boy, you can ask Kristen, like I can't shut up. Like, it's just like, blah, 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 and it's like intense and it's out there. And that's just me, because that's how I react to that level of caffeine. But for some women, and I go into this a lot in my Feeding Over 40 program, which there's a digital version on my website. I have a whole talk, like a 20-minute talk on coffee. But here's what I want to tell you is sometimes it's not doing you any good. Sometimes there's a genetic component to which it's actually taxing your adrenal glands. And then the last thing is, coffee is a crop that needs to be regulated, in my opinion. Like, we are drinking everything we put into our bodies and onto our skin needs to be looked at for its chemical compound, how it's grown, how it's harvested, and then how it's put together and how is it preserved. And when you look at that, coffee has a lot of ticks against it. So listen to your intuition. Of course, if you want to hear more on this, you reach out to me. Let's have a conversation about this. Kristen can give you the link if you want to book in for a quick call. So thank you for your question, whoever that was. And ladies, ask me more questions. I created this series because I had, 12 women in my Facebook group say, I want to know more on this. And so that's why I created this series. And I've gone deep into this series and really given women a lot of tools to really start moving the needle for them. The last thing I want to say is I do have a free quiz also that would also help women to identify maybe the one primary hormonal disharmony. So that's something Kristen's going to put into the what are we calling this? The show,
Chat.
the chat, the link, whatever. She's gonna put the link to the quiz. So definitely take the quiz. And there's, a link to a digital course that is, you get a deep discount to a digital course if you take the quiz. So that's another great aspect of that. If you want to learn more about the hormone that through this quiz, it's short, but it's potent. I get great feedback from lots of women who have taken this quiz. It's a way to really understand, because I give you not only what the hormonal disharmony is, but a lot of anywhere from 3 to 5 elements to help you start taking radical responsibility for your hormones and changing the way your body functions. All right. Anything else, Kristen? Can you think of anything else?
I can. I think you covered it.
All right, ladies, this is a long one, 45 minutes, but thank you so much. As always, I really value everyone in my audience. This is my intention, is to change the trajectory of women's health, especially women over 40, and to provide resources, both free and investment, ways for you to invest in yourself, to help yourself feel better, to age more gracefully, and to have a vital, long life. Thanks so much, and we'll see you next week on Harmony TV.
Thanks, everyone.